Welcome to the Achieve Back to School webinar. My name is Jeanette and I will be your operator for today's call. At this time, all participants are in a listen-only mode. Later, we will conduct a question and answer session. Please note that this conference is being recorded. I will now turn the call over to Ann Bowles. Ms. Bowles, you may begin.
Wonderful. Thanks, Jeanette. My name is Ann Bowles, and I'm the Associate Director here at Achieve on our Strategic Initiatives team. And I wanted to take a moment to welcome everyone to today's webinar focused on leveraging back to school to help inform parents about the transition to college and career-ready standards. As we all know, as schools are transitioning to higher, more rigorous standards, it's critical that parents are informed about what the transition means for their children, how tests and homework in particular may look different, and what resources are available to help them be able to play an informed and supportive role in their students' learning. On today's webinar, I will share an overview of the goals for the webinar and then provide a little bit of background about Achieve. We'll then share out some reporting trends on parents and the Common Core, with trends that we're seeing in the media. We'll then pivot to an overview of some of the latest research on what parents are really saying with Michael Gilligan, Achieve Vice President for Strategic Initiatives, and Alex Brady, Partner with Public Opinion Strategies. From there, we'll turn it over to state-based advocates Aaron Hart and Christy Silverstein, representing the Arizona AIM Hire Coalition, who will share tips they've learned on communicating with parents. From there, we'll hear from Jared Miracle with Gibson County Special School District in Tennessee, who will lend his perspective as a district leader via video. We'll then have an opportunity to highlight resources that we have found out there and then engage in a conversation with everyone on the line. As you can see, we certainly have a lot that we're really hoping to cover. Please do know that we will be recording the webinar, and it will be available on our website. You can see the link down below at the bottom of this slide, www.achieve.org/meeting/webinars. And throughout the webinar, if you do have any questions, feel free to send them via the chat box. You can also, of course, email me directly. I will certainly share our contact information here at Achieve at the end of the webinar. With that, I'll share a little bit about Achieve. As many of you know, Achieve is strongly committed to ensuring all students graduate from high school, college, and career ready, or in other words, prepared academically for anything they want to do after high school. We've worked with a cross-sector of state leaders to improve post-secondary preparation by aligning key policies in the areas of standards, graduation requirements, assessments, and accountability and public reporting systems. Now to the topic at hand. Knowing that one of the best ways to advocate for the standards is to really help the parents understand how they can help our kids, our goal for the webinar is to inform and equip leaders at the state and local levels to do just that, to leverage your unique perspective to help inform parents about the transition to college and career-ready standards. My colleague, Kelly Hughes, an associate on our communications team, is going to be able to share some trends that we've seen in the media in regards to parents and the Common Core to help ground our conversation.
Thank you, Ann, and hello, everyone. I just wanted to highlight a few major trends in the media that are important to flag when we're considering the best ways to communicate and work with parents on issues related to the Common Core. So you'll see on this slide that we've included a recent example of each of these issues. In the interest of time, I'm not going to go into the examples, but you are welcome to view them, check them out after the presentation if you'd like to dig a little deeper into some of these. So the first major parent concern that we're seeing pop up a lot in the media is the claim that Common Core, particularly Common Core math, is overly complicated. We see this a lot in news stories, and parents are quoted expressing this concern. We are also hearing parents say that Common Core is different from how they learned English, language arts, or math when they were in school. So we hear a lot about how parents feel frustrated that they can't help their children with homework because they don't understand the same methodology that their child is learning in school. We also hear pretty frequently in the media that Common Core is a one-size-fits-all approach and that parents are concerned that their child's needs and learning styles won't be accommodated. We also hear parents claiming that there are no longer any memorization of basic facts happening under Common Core instruction, and that kind of gets back to the idea that learning is different from what parents experienced when they were in school. And finally, we're often hearing in the media that parents are concerned because they equate the Common Core with testing. They argue that there's too much testing and teaching to the test and not enough learning happening in classrooms. So there are a few reasons why these themes stick and why we keep seeing these concerns in particular popping up over and over again. And the first is the emotional nature of these concerns. Parent perspectives, particularly with regard to when they perceive a threat to their child's well-being, are really emotionally powerful and more emotionally powerful than the perspective of a lawmaker or a superintendent. So they often stand out and come up over and over again because they make for powerful stories, even if they're incorrect or misdirected. And the second reason that these trends really continue to stick and stand out is related to the urgency that these parents feel when they're conveying their message. Although there are plenty of parents who are supportive of the Common Core, we don't hear as much from them because supportive parents don't really feel the same urgent threat from a lack of high standards, so they're less deliberate about making their voices heard. So with that, it's important to remember that these concerns are not necessarily representative of all or even the majority of parents and their perspectives, but they are out there and they're coming up over and over again, so it's important to be aware of them.
Thanks, Kelly. We can't ignore these pervasive trends, and as supporters of college and career-ready standards for all students, it's certainly incumbent on us to be cognizant of what the trends in the media are, but even more importantly, it's important that we're cognizant of what parents are really saying, what information they're asking for or support they want, and how to best communicate with parents. As we know, one of the best ways to advocate for the standards is to help parents help their students. To ground our conversation in what parents are really saying and what parents really want when it comes to the standards, we'll now turn to my colleague, Michael Gilligan, who's our Vice President for Strategic Initiatives here at Achieve, who will introduce Alex Brady.
Thanks, Ann. So, obviously, based on the trends that we've all been seeing regarding the engagement of parents around college and career-ready standards, that we're at a crossroads. And so, in partnership with Expect More Arizona, we engaged Alex Brady in Public Opinion Strategies, where she's a partner, to go and talk with parents. And so you don't need to hear any more from me. I'll turn directly to Alex to talk about some of the really interesting findings that she uncovered during a conversation with parents in Phoenix, Arizona, and some of the other work that she's done around what parent concerns and issues are in terms of implementing college and career-ready standards.
Great. Thank you so much, Michael, and Ann, and also Kelly for the setup, because I think some of the things that you mentioned, Kelly, that are in the media, I'm going to touch on some of those. We're going to hear those as I sort of go through what we heard in these focus groups. So these were done in late August, so they're, relatively fresh. And they were among moms of elementary and middle school kids and moms of high school kids. And so, just to touch briefly on the standards, and then, we'll shift to the tests and dig a little deeper in a moment. But, interestingly, the standards, awareness is growing. There's no doubt about that, and we're seeing that also in recent national data that, we've been tracking it over time. But actual understanding and real comprehension of what the standards are is still pretty thin, I have to say. We heard from these moms in Phoenix that they know they've sort of become partisan. They've heard them from their friends, their school. They've seen a little bit in the media. But there's no real understanding about what they are. And there is real hesitation as such because a lot of what they are hearing is negative. And that's having a real impact. Again, just, obviously, these are focus groups, and we get to hear the why from a small group of people. But just to give you a sense of context, we do have recent national data, and what it's showing is that over time, not only have the negative impressions of the standards gone up over the last few years among all voters, they've also gone up among parents, and parents are more negative than voters overall. And that is a clear red flag. And some of the reason for these standards are some of the things that Kelly actually just talked about, right? The one-size-fits-all. I don't want to see my kid in a box. And that's how some of these women in the Phoenix focus groups describe this, that that's their impression, is that everybody's going to learn the same, everybody has to be doing exactly the same thing and learning the same thing all at the same time. This sense of no need for change, this is really linked to something I'm going to talk about in a moment related to actual experience of what they're seeing their kids bring home. They don't see these standards as implementation is getting underway, at least right now. They don't see them as an improvement. And that means that they don't see them as why they need to even really happen, okay? And the other thing is that at this point, there's still no real sense that these are state-based. It's all sort of national, federal when they talk about it. That is really lost on pretty much most parents that we talk to. Looking at the assessments, and I see the slide is on there. In Arizona, there's really not a lot of love for the existing statewide assessment called AIMS. So that sort of, puts you in a place where, okay, maybe people will be more receptive to a new test, and to some extent they are. But they're skeptical about the new test for a few reasons. I mean, first of all, nobody loves tests. So this was always going to be a very tough issue for y'all because testing is not a favorite topic of anybody's. But because of the negative views of the standards, that, of course, bleeds over and creates anxiety around the tests that will be related to them. And at this point, I mean, high school moms that we talked to were certainly more aware that new tests were coming than elementary and middle school moms. But even in that high school mom group, they really didn't connect the dots. That they were going to be aligned back to these new standards. So when that's explained, it sort of gives real pause for thought. Gee, I don't like the standards. What does that mean for the tests? And as they talk about the standards, and we'll cover this more in the next slide, this second bullet point here about more steps to get an answer means more opportunity for error. That's part of the really big issue that's going on with math and how they're perceiving math. And so I'll talk about that in a moment, but the point is that they're seeing their kids having to take more steps to get to an answer. And so if that's true and these tests are going to be linked to them, then there's more chance that my kid is going to make a mistake if you're asking them to do 10 steps instead of 3. And then there's still this expectation that teachers are going to teach to the test, right? So even though we've talked to, voters and we talked to these parents in these groups about the idea that, look, these are going to, better measure what kids are learning, that certainly is an appealing point. But they still end up at the same place, which is, okay, but there's still new tests. So everybody has to get used to them. That means they're just going to stop teaching to the AIMS test and start teaching to this test. And so that sort of perception around testing is still very much there. The other thing that we heard from some of these moms in Phoenix was, well, gee, so my kid has to learn this whole new way, and then what? In a few years, it's going to change again? And that was certainly a concern among people who have younger kids, right? They learn a new way now, and then 3 years later, they're going to have to do another new way. So we go to the next slide. This is, I think this is the most glaring part of what we heard, and really where you start to understand the red flag around this. So the actual experience that moms are having, that parents are having right now, is so different from what we're saying about the standards or the tests. And so I'll give you a brief example. I mean, we actually provide, a short paragraph. It's sort of a neutral to positive paragraph. It's not overly loaded by any stretch of the imagination. But when I had these Phoenix moms react to that and sort of say whether they favor or oppose the standard or test, I mean, I had moms saying, well, do you want me to actually respond to what's on the paper in front of me or what I know? And so I had them do both for the test. And just to give you a sense, out of 9 moms, based on our description of the test, they voted 8-1 in favor of it. And they talked about the fact that, well, gee, who's not for this? Of course I'm for this. But if they were asked to just tell me favor or oppose based on what you know, what you understand, that result flipped 1 to 6. 7 of them did it. So that just gives you a sense, and this is just the beginning of where we're at with this. And particularly among elementary and middle school moms, part of the reason that there's such a frustrating experience right now is the math. Absolutely the math. So what's happening here is, and these moms were incredulous, frustrated, a couple of them downright angry in these groups when they were describing this. So some of them have been told by teachers, do not help your children because you only know the old way and we need the kids to learn the new way. So right off the bat, they're sort of being prohibited from trying to help their child, which at the end of the day, that's all a mom wants to do is help their child. There are also no textbooks. There's no examples. And so they're talking about the fact that their kids are just bringing home worksheets with limited examples. There's no point of reference either for the parent to become acquainted with the new method or even for the child to really, work through and look to an example and then work through their own worksheet. So without even sort of a point of reference that a parent could pick up a textbook and actually start reading and understanding, they are totally lost. And they just feel like they cannot help. And they're totally frustrated when they see what's going on, too. I mean, we had moms saying, why are they being asked to take 10 steps instead of 3? The answer is so obviously there. My kids are coming home telling me that math was a discussion today instead of actually being taught. I have my kids coming home and they're drawing math. How do you draw math? They are incredulous. These parents are incredulous when they talk about this. And so they cannot wrap their head around it. And I really pressed them on this and said, look, maybe it's growing pains. Do you think it might be growing pains and, everybody's got to adjust and then it could be better? They are reluctant to even see that and see this as a growing phase because they're basically saying, it doesn't even make sense. What my kid is doing does not make sense. Why do they need to do it this way when it's so quick and easy to do it the other way that I know? And so there really is a gulf there. And what they're experiencing there is exactly sort of underscores, this challenge in communication because, we can talk about the standards and tests till the cows come home and have advocacy statements, and I'm not saying we should not, but the point is that people will always make a decision on their experience and not what they are told. And so that's what's going on and really feeding into some of this negative, growing negative views as this continues. And until they see that the new system is going to benefit their children, it's hard for them to even get beyond where they're at right now. They've got to understand that these things are an improvement and that it's going to be worthwhile. So let's talk about, how do you communicate? What are things that worked? Because obviously we still do have to use messages, and what can be done. So hearing from teachers, and I think, probably everybody on this call knows this, and we've talked about this throughout all of our research, and these groups were no exception. Parents want to hear from teachers. They're the front line. They know exactly what's going on in the classroom. And they want to hear from the teachers as to, their opinion on them, how they're going to be better. They want reassurance. But it's got to be genuine. It cannot sound like it's sort of, the teachers looking the parent in the eye and sort of communicating differently by, their body language or their eyes than what they're saying. And we've had parents talk about that. Well, my kid's teacher said it was okay, but you could tell she didn't think that. So that's a tricky one. Elementary and middle school parents also wanted to hear from principals, school boards as well because they see them as the ones making the actual decisions and then teachers are left to sort of implement. And that needs to be an interactive conversation. And then some of the resources that they were looking for, a parent-focused website, but with interactivity, right? So there's resources, there's, an FAQ, if you like. They can interact with each other. There's blogs, so they can talk to teachers. They can talk to each other. Hopefully there would be some kind of, school admin presence on there, too. Of course, meet with the child's teacher or counselor, and then even a parent workshop that's hosted by the school or by teachers to sort of bring them up to speed on what these standards really are and how they can help their kids. In terms of messaging, we've done other work where we've done a lot deeper dive into messaging, but in terms of what we tested here, and Christy and Erin, I'm sure will touch on this, but some of the messaging that they currently are using tested really well, and it had a sense of a reassurance to it. Essentially, they were, part of that statement talks about, look, the tests are not going to be required for high school graduation. It's a new assessment. Scores may look lower. This is going to happen. It's common for any implementation of any new test. So it's sort of very common sense, very grounded, calming, reassuring language. And then other themes that came out, the idea of consistency, being able to compare results across districts and states, a test that measures what kids are really learning. And this is appealing. There's no doubt about it. And especially when it's sort of linked to the idea of kids are going to be learning and being tested on critical thinking and problem solving. Those are two phrases that have, throughout all of our Common Core testing, which has been going on for years now, have constantly been real buzzwords and very appealing words to parents. And then the idea that there is too much time teaching to the test, right? Acknowledging that and then explaining how this will not be the case. Now, that one is a little tougher because of what we talked about earlier, but that also can be reinforced. And then the last point on this page, share success stories. And there is a success story to be told in Kentucky. There are some positive, stories coming out of New York. Obviously, the more states that are implementing, the more stories are going to become apparent. But let me tell you that this is going to be so critical as things move further downfield because the test score drops, which are, of course, the next frontier. And we didn't talk a great deal with these moms in Phoenix about it. But I can tell you from our national survey work that when we specifically tested messaging for and against this whole idea of why test scores are dropping and how to handle them, I can tell you that only one message actually reached the threshold of what we consider to be a persuasive message among parents, and it was the success story of Kentucky. So success stories are going to become even more important as time goes on. And then I just have a couple more slides. I'm going quickly because I'm conscious of time. So recommendations. I think the big thing here is it's got to be real information at this point. I'm not saying don't do any advocacy. Of course that has to happen too, but what parents really want and what we heard from these moms, they are hungry for real information. So help them understand why. And what I mean by why is, why are these standards and tests an improvement, and how is their child going to benefit? That's all they care about. That's all parents care about. How is my child going to benefit, and how can I support my child? Okay, how can I help them get there? That's really what is at the crux of this issue right now as parents are experiencing this implementation. Explain how the goals of the standards are going to be achieved, right? How are we actually going to get there? It seems pretty lofty. And then, certainly for high school, reassuring that the graduation isn't dependent on the test. So in terms of this, why is it an improvement? How is it going to benefit my child? Part of that is providing real resources to parents, like, understanding the new math, tips and suggestions for how to help their kids with their homework or how to help them adjust to the new standards. That's the kind of stuff that these moms are talking about that they wanted. They didn't care about advocacy. They wanted real information that they could really, get their arms around and use in their daily life. And then on slide 12, you do need to find educators who are supportive and have them speak in person to parents. Have meetings at your schools or in your districts. But I caveat this that it cannot sound politically correct, okay? This can't sound like a canned speech, and it also has to allow for Q&A from parents. So this has got to be, educators talking candidly, acknowledge the challenges, but obviously talk about, yes, but here's what we're going to benefit from once we get over this adjustment phase. Okay, here's how your child is going to benefit. Here's how we know it's going to work. That's the type of thing that has to be said at these, meetings, and allow parents to ask whatever questions they have. And then I think that, obviously, all methods of communication need to be ramped up. And it's got to be significant, and it's got to be consistent. Parents just really, there's a dearth of actual information for them right now, and that's what they're really hungry and looking for. I sound like a broken record at this point, but I can't emphasize it enough. You really need to create and distribute resources that are going to help parents help their kids, because that's what they care about at the end of the day.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Alex, for sharing that information. And I think we really appreciate your candor in sharing that information. Certainly, if we're going to be able to take on any of those recommendations and really help parents help their students, we need to understand what parents really want and where they're really coming from. We're going to pivot now to two colleagues, Aaron Hart, Chief Operating Officer, and Christy Silverstein, Vice President of Public Engagement with Expect More Arizona, both representing the Arizona AIMS Hire Coalition, who had the benefit of this focus group happening in their state and have really been able to apply some of the findings to their work, but also just bring with them a tremendous wealth of experience in communicating with parents, and are going to share some of the tips they've learned on communicating with parents about the standards. So with that, I'll turn it over to Aaron and Christy.
Thanks so much. This is Aaron Hart, here from Expect More Arizona. What we thought we might do today is give you a little briefing on who we are as an organization, and then tell you about some of the key learnings we had from these focus groups and how we're actually applying them in practice as we move our work forward. So we've got about 10 minutes or so, and that's what we're hoping to share with you today. So quickly, who we are at Expect More Arizona, we're a statewide 501c3 nonprofit, nonpartisan education advocacy organization. We're independent, and we work with partners all over the state in order to advance a movement for world-class education. So we're routing businesses, parents, voters, old people, young people, community organizations, and many, many others to be part of this effort to raise the collective public will to support education in Arizona. So we do that through raising public awareness, we engage and mobilize parents and voters, and we convene our partners to take action on advocacy issues. So next slide. We are really excited about this work because it fits so squarely within our bigger mission, and we're very fortunate to have a partnership with our Arizona Public Engagement Task Force, which is this coalition of about 50 partners who we're all an independent group, and Expect More Arizona is lucky enough to be able to facilitate this group. But we have membership across education, business, philanthropy, students, public sector, private sector, you name it. We've got a huge list of partners, but more importantly, great buy-in and support from these partners who have all come together to say that the standards and a new assessment in Arizona are so critically important that we're all going to work on it together, even though we may not agree on every issue that we all work on independently. So it's been a really great opportunity for us to come together and raise our voices to build support and awareness for the standards across the state. And we've been doing that both in the parent audience and also in the advocacy space to make sure that the standards stay on track here in Arizona. So as we do our work, our focus this year is really going to be drilling into and continuing to add depth to our work as we provide resources and information to parents. Can we go to the next slide? Because as you've heard from this data and from some of these media trends, there are really some key opportunities here that we can all seize upon. And really our heart and interest in doing this is to make sure that we can provide resources to parents. And we really want to connect with them and help them be engaged in their child's education and be able to give them the tools to do that. And so some of the key opportunities based on the focus group feedback that we heard that we're going to really focus on this year is first to help parents understand what the standards are and why they're necessary. So you heard from Alex that awareness is increasing over time, but we're still seeing that from the data and anecdotally as we talk to parents that a lot of parents still need to understand what it is they are. And of course, we need to talk about why they're necessary. What are the benefits to kids and how they're different than what we had before here in Arizona. So that'll be a continuation of that work. And we want to do this by supporting schools and teachers and sharing information with parents. And you'll hear about some of the ways we're doing that through our back-to-school efforts and other efforts that Christy will go through in a minute. But we feel like those are so essential because educators are the most trusted resource when it comes to any education topic, including the standards and assessment. So in our role, we want to be able to equip educators to be able to do that and share information. So if we can play that role in giving them resources, then we're happy to do that. Third, we also want to share information on the implementation of the new assessment. In Arizona, like as in many states, we will have a new assessment that's going to replace our current state assessment being implemented actually this year. So we're going to ramp up our efforts pretty significantly to share information about what it is and what the implications are for kids and families pretty quickly here. We also want to alleviate frustrations with math and show what high expectations look like. And in thinking about both of those, we want to demonstrate what is actually happening in classrooms. We want to bring the standards to life because on paper, they're kind of wonky. They're academic standards and may not have a whole lot of meaning unless you actually see them in practice. And so we want to highlight great work that's happening with teachers and classrooms all over the state and tell their stories. And we want to actually show through video and media some great examples of what those look like. So if we can go to the next slide. We want to share with you 3 ways that we're doing this. The first way is through our Arizona Aims Higher campaign, which is really focused on ramping up communication and making sure we're connecting with parents on the standards and assessment. And then 2 other ways that we're doing this in the back to school and parent-teacher conference timeframe here in Arizona, really specifically. So Christy's going to walk us through that, and I should say that as we get started, that undercut among all of these priorities that we'll share with you is our effort to really engage and elevate educator voices in our work. So you'll hear us kind of reference that as we go through the rest of the slides, but that's been a really key strategy of ours that's embedded across these platforms to make sure that we're telling their stories, we're giving them a platform to share their success, and also to say where help is still needed. So that's been a really effective method for us as we've been doing the work that also helps us advocate for them and then have a really great communicator directly to parents. So with that, I will turn it over to Christy Silverstein. She's our VP of Public Engagement here at Expect More Arizona and does a lot of the day-to-day work with the task force.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having us today. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Arizona Aims Higher campaign. It was launched this past January as a public awareness campaign that was led by Expect More Arizona in partnership with the Arizona Public Engagement Task Force in order to help parents, community leaders, and others just be a little bit more aware of the standards in the new assessment and actually drive them to take action. So on the next slide, we can talk about it's a multimedia campaign. It included a robust website complete with a ton of different resources for every different type of audience. And based upon some of the feedback we've gotten recently from parents during the focus groups, we are actually working on revising the site a little bit with more parent-friendly perspective. We also produced a video called The Debate. That's up in the top right corner. You could see it on the homepage of our website after the webinar. And we think it really cuts through all the education jargon about the standards and addresses many of the key myths without specifically calling them out. So it resonates really well with parents and other audiences that aren't as familiar with the education industry. And then, as Erin referenced, we know that teachers are that best spokesperson on education topics, so we worked really hard to elevate our local teacher voices. So one way we've done that is through Teacher Tuesday. You'll see the hashtag Teacher Tuesday at the bottom right corner. We push this out through our social media channels and showcase a supportive quote from a local teacher every week on Tuesdays. And then we also use teacher perspectives in a lot of our earned media opportunities. So when we have media requests or looking at op-eds or blogs, we do tap into our teacher network a lot to showcase their perspectives from the classroom. On the next page, or the next slide, our campaign also included a number of different digital components, including banner ads, emails, infographics that we shared through social media. This slide, you can also see a reference to the radio spot. We did a 30-second radio spot with a local teacher as well to utilize her voice in our work. The next slide shows some visuals of the parent resources we developed specifically for the campaign around standards and assessment. We are looking at revising these slightly based upon some of the feedback we got from the focus group, so it was really helpful in kind of looking at what messages resonated well with them, what they liked about the pieces, to be able to really keep that in mind as we go through and revise them and reprint. So the next slide talks a little bit about our back-to-school toolkit opportunity here. So without these and a lot of the other resources that Expect More Arizona has already developed, we packaged it together as a back-to-school toolkit, and we shared it with our partners and contacts with schools and districts throughout the state in order to get the materials into their hands. So we also built a web page where they can go and see all of these pieces verbatim. It's the expectmorearizona.org/back-to-school. You can think it's cut off a little bit at the bottom, but that's the link where you can reference all of that. We've already had a request from a number of different schools across the state and several districts. So we've distributed materials to more than 16,000 parents through schools and teachers directly. And we're continuing to get requests as we move forward. On the next slide, as part of our Arizona Empire media buy, we actually produced this back-to-school parent guide that we printed and mailed out to 44,000 households statewide. It's actually a 8.5 by 11 kind of 3-page fold-out brochure with lots of information that helps parents help their kids during the school year, and has some relevant information about what the new standards are, as well as questions they could ask their child's teacher, and some more information about the assessment that we know is coming down the pipeline this year, just to get them ready for that. The next slide talks about our parent-teacher conferences initiative. So we have grade-by-grade milestones, which actually was one of the pieces that resonated really high in the focus groups that we did. But it's the skills that students should be learning each grade level, and then activities that parents can do at home with them. And we have them in English on one side and Spanish on the back. So those are really helpful during parent-teacher conferences for teachers to be able to talk with parents about what skills they'll be learning that year and kind of open the door to that conversation. And then questions to ask your child's teacher is a little infographic that we printed as cards as well, that we gave out to a lot of the schools and teachers to utilize to just give their parents a way to start that conversation with them. So the next slide will talk about some other national resources that we've tapped into. We've utilized the National PTA Parent Guide, as well as a lot of other national resources on our website to help provide that information that's already been created out to parents and others that visit the Arizona Empire site. And then a quick little sneak peek about something that is coming in October is grade schools have created great kids milestones. They're actually short little videos that don't talk about the standards by name, but actually show what students will be learning with specific subject matters. So we know those are coming down the pipeline and think they'll be really useful for other states to use as well. And with that, that's all we had today. Both Erin and my emails are on there. If you had any follow-up questions, if we could help provide samples of any of these materials, we're happy to help other states and other partners in what they're trying to do.
Thank you so much, Christy, and thanks as well to Erin. You're both real leaders in this work, and it's wonderful that we can highlight your work. I will note that at the end of the webinar, we're going to highlight a resource document that Achieve put together, and a lot of the resources that Erin and Christy just went over, including the grade schools milestones as well as the PTA parent guides, are included in that overview, so there'll be links included in that, and you'll have easy access to it. It's also available on our website. In the interest of time, we're actually not going to show the video. We have a video of Jared Myrickle, who's a supervisor of instruction with Gibson County Special School District in Tennessee, and has really done a tremendous job of really staying true to informing parents about the transition to the standards and trying to provide them with information so that they can help their students. What I can share is that we will have the video of Jared available on our website. There's actually a link embedded in the PowerPoint, and it will take us less than 24 hours to get everything loaded up onto the website, so you'll be able to access the video. And if you'd like additional information on the really good work that Jared and his colleagues are doing in Tennessee, there are 2 additional resources here on the work they're doing around Common Core implementation, as well as some insights from Jared on how to communicate with parents about the Common Core and help to explain it to them. So So what we'd like to do now is actually highlight some of the resources that are out there and then really open it up for a conversation with individuals on the phone, give others an opportunity to share what they're doing to inform parents about the transition to the standards, and as well as open it up for questions. As I mentioned, Achieve did compile a sampling of the resources that state education agencies, school districts, and third-party and national advocacy organizations have developed. It's posted on our website at achieve.org/achieving Common Core. You can see a link to it there. And then I'm also going to actually take you directly to the website so that you can actually see it a little more easily. Of course, there's Jared. But if you're actually on our website, we have a number of resources that are highlighted here that could be useful to you in your work. And the overview document I mentioned includes resources on how and why school and homework may look different, as well as resources to help students, including the Great Kids Milestones. And I actually see that Bill Jackson is on the line with Great Schools, so hopefully during the Q&A portion he can actually share a little bit more about that resource. And then there are also general communications resources that many of our national partners have put together, including the PTA, which Aaron and Christy mentioned. Again, that is available on our website. With that, Jeanette, I think we should open it up to Q&A and see if there are any individuals who have information they'd like to share about how they're working to inform parents about the transition to the standards.
Thank you. We will now begin the question and answer session. If you have a question, please press star, then 1 on your touch-tone phone. If you wish to be removed from the queue, please press the pound sign or the hash key. There will be a delay before the first question is announced. If you're using a speakerphone, you may need to pick up the handset first before pressing the numbers. Once again, if you have a question, please press star, then 1 on your touch-tone phone. And we have a question from Bill Jackson. Please go ahead.
Hello everybody. Bill Jackson from Great Schools here. And I wanted to elaborate just briefly on what Christine said from Expect More Arizona regarding a new project that we have launching in October, and where you can get a sneak peek of it right now. We have worked with student achievement partners for the last 2 years to create videos that show students manifesting Common Core standards, grade by grade. Approximately 10 videos each grade. Each video is approximately 1 to 2 minutes. And videos show students working with teachers, and it kind of gets at the essence of some of what you were describing earlier is needed by parents, which is, all right, when you strip away all the other elements of this, what is this? What is Common Core? And so in math, we look at procedure, conceptual understanding, and application. Or in reading, we look at elements like fluency, or demonstrating understanding, building knowledge. So, and the word Common Core actually never appears in these videos because we're really trying to position it as, how do you tell if your kid is on track? And we will be putting Common Core in the fine print over time, as well as dramatically improving the interface. But anyway, this is available at milestones.greatkids.org. It is in the Achieve list there, and I wanted to make everybody on the phone aware of it. And in October, we'll launch a new version of the interface that makes it much more easy to share it socially, and it organizes these videos much better. So I just wanted to share that and thank everybody for checking it out. And if they have any feedback, they can contact me at bjackson@greatschools.org or anybody at Great Schools with that feedback.
Thanks, Jared. Bill, I'm so sorry. Thanks, Bill.
No problem.
We really appreciate you sharing that information, and I did actually pull up the website so people can see it and do know that the interface will be updated in October to make it a little more parent-friendly. Jeanette, do we have any other questions?
Yes, our next question comes from Tammy Bartles. Please go ahead.
Hi, this is Tammy Bartles, and I'm actually the president of Kansas PTA, and I just wanted to share a little information about what we've been doing in Kansas to help communicate with parents that has been really successful. Kansas is not necessarily a Common Core friendly state, but we have had some success with getting people more engaged in the process. Like the presenter said earlier, hearing from teachers has been paramount to everything we do when communicating with parents. One of the things we've had great success with is as we go out to different presentations, there are some teachers from the state of Kansas who served on the state review committee for the standards, and they will come along and they will talk about what they did and how involved they were and how they can point to wording that was their wording that are in the actual standards. That's really helped us address that federalization issue. It makes parents more comfortable to know, oh, these are teachers in my district who actually looked at these. Another thing, the parent guides to student success that I put up on the screen, thanks. Teachers have told us they are taking these to parent-teacher conferences and they're sitting down and using them as a guide to speak to parents about what the standards are. In the guides, there's hints how parents can help at home. There's hints about things they can talk to their teacher about to help them understand, and it covers all content areas and all grades. So those have been great, and they're used by teachers at non-PTA schools, so it's not a PTA-specific resource. Anyone can access and use those. Another thing we've been doing has been really trying to engage pre-service teachers. The various colleges in our state have asked the PTA to come and talk to pre-service teachers about how they can talk to families, and we've really focused that discussion on talking to families about Common Core, and that's been very helpful in making new teachers comfortable with the subject, which we think will help our transition further down the road. And then National PTA and the Hunt Institute also did a series of videos that are great. There are some videos on advocacy for people who are interested in that, but there are videos where they talk to teachers, where they talk to students and superintendents about the standards and things that people can do to help and the difference the standards have been making. And then the final thing we've done that is really important is just taking every opportunity to engage parents wherever parents are comfortable. Just yesterday I had a conversation on Facebook with someone. They had posted a story that was very anti-Common Core, that wasn't even about Common Core, it was about Dibbles. But I took the opportunity to kind of explain what Common Core was and give them tips and help them address some of their frustration with math, because that's the big area. So there's a lot of things that you can be doing to make people more comfortable with it.
Thanks, Tammy. That's really helpful. We really appreciate you sharing that information. And I will also point out that on the overview of resources, there's also a link to the parent guides that the Ohio PTA produced in partnership with the National PTA, which include guides to what students should be learning by grade and are very accessible for parents. Jeanette, is there anyone else on the line?
Yes, we have a question from Jared Begum. Please go ahead.
Hey, Ann. I just wanted to thank Christy for sharing some of the stuff we're doing in Expect More Arizona. We have done some of the same things in Tennessee, and I was going to highlight a couple other things we've been doing that seem to resonate well with parents. First of all, we tried to establish a pretty strong relationship with our state PTA. And each summer, we've done what we call PTA Roadshow, where we go across the state to the 5 major cities where they do their state training and meet with all their local officers from the regional PTA boards. And we have an opportunity to discuss standards with them and assessment. And also, we make connections locally, so I can come back and do local presentations on community nights. So I've probably done about 20 of those in the past 3 months or 4 months at the regional level with PTAs. Another thing that we have found has resonated with parents, and Christy mentioned this also, is highlighting the educator voice. When they really look to their educators and the teachers for guidance, and when they see the educators have a positive attitude about the standards and some of the initiatives that are going on in the school, it helps set with them a whole lot easier than if they say, this is one more thing the state's making us do or whatever. So we've really tried to highlight the educator voice and can lift up districts like Dr. Miracle, Jared Miracle, who's got the video that you want to post on your website. Their district has gone above and beyond to really engage parents and buy into the whole concept of fidelity to Common Core, K through 12, and higher standards, and they finished as one of the top 5% of the districts in the state. So trying to uplift educators like that as spokespeople for the standards has really been effective. And I see you brought up our trifold brochure that we give to parents. Last year, we gave one of those to every single student in the state that went home with their TCAP results at the beginning of the school year, and then we just did an updated version. Our outreach coordinator, Mary Cypress Howe, has been working on that. We just actually last week got our new batch in that's going to all the districts in the state. And finally, two other things that have really made a huge impact for us statewide is I've had the opportunity to go to each, and I'm almost finished up with meeting with the superintendent study councils across the state and walking them through a parent engagement plan and what they can do to better engage their parents and explain higher standards and aligned assessment to them, and then take into that meeting a framework for an op-ed that all the superintendents can sign on. They can tweak it a little bit. I tweak it based on their feedback, and then they submit it to their local papers as a joint op-ed to show that there's solidarity in their region from all the superintendents. So by the 1st of November, I will have met with all the superintendents across the state in their study council groups and have the opportunity to really at the local level get them to get behind this push to continue with higher standards. And finally, this is kind of anecdotal, but it's really had an impact and resonates with a lot of parents, is that when I find a parent in a region that's had multi-generational kids, let's say they've got a child in high school and then they're like me, they've had an oops baby, 7, 8 years later, 10 years later, that's coming through the elementary school, and they can really see a dramatic difference in the rigor and the type of work their child is doing and the benefits they're reaping from it. So I've tried to lift up that voice in the region so that parents, first of all, they recognize the school where the parent, their child goes, and to say, I see the difference as a parent of a multi-generational children that these higher standards are making. So that's some of the things we're doing in Tennessee that I know folks on the call are doing as well, but it's really resonating with our parents. Thank you.
Thanks, Jerry. We appreciate you sharing that information. Again, those resources will also be available on the overview document. Jeanette, I think we have time for one more question.
We have a question from Mary Bonicia. Please go ahead.
Hi. First, thanks to everyone for sharing all of this great information. I was wondering, it was mentioned earlier that sometimes teachers are not convincing in the way they convey the information. So what kind of supports do you think are needed and most effective in getting teachers ready to provide the message in a sincere and convincing way to parents?
Well, let's actually turn that over to, I don't know if Alex Batty is still on the line. She maybe had to jump off, but we could also turn over to Aaron and Christy to hear if you have any insights on what it takes to really help equip teachers to be those voices for parents.
Sure, this is Erin. Thank you for the question. So I think it's sort of a multi-pronged effort. And in our experience, the teachers and educators that we've spoken to in Arizona are actually really, really, really supportive of the standards. We've seen that through some polling data as well. The issue where they have a concern is is with the assessment and how the scores will be applied to any future accountability guidelines, either for schools or for themselves and teacher evaluations. So that's where they get a little bit nervous. So when it comes to the actual content and structure of the standards, they like them, and they think that that they'll really help students succeed, and they like that it gives them more flexibility in the classroom. And so what we're trying to do is take the materials that we have, because we've developed the materials you've seen, and increase teachers' knowledge that these materials are out there and available, and we're making sure we have opportunities to get them to them free of charge to use if they feel is helpful. So that's been a key way that we've done that. In our work, too, we're also, as we go out and about and as we're talking to various groups and teacher leaders and school districts and superintendents, we're also raising awareness of the standards, which is pretty high, obviously, now by teachers. But we're also providing opportunities for teachers to talk through some of their concerns, if they do have any, regarding implementation, and trying to facilitate that as much as we can, so that we can then hear some of their issues and integrate them in the things that we're advocating for at the legislature and with the State Board of Education. So, in addition, teachers who are really supportive, we're trying to share their stories of success, and we're trying to position them as spokespeople in the media through social media, as Christy mentioned with Teacher Tuesday, and in responding to various media requests. We had a teacher go on TV this morning, for example, to talk about various education issues. So we're kind of doing this in multiple ways. And if teachers do have other concerns, we're trying to help turn those into part of our advocacy work so that we can help meet them and raise them up as well.
Thanks, Erin, and thanks, Mary, for that question as well. In the interest of time, we're going to turn now I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Michael Gilligan.
Thanks, Ann, and thanks for those comments, Erin. Obviously, this has been, I think for us, a very rich conversation, and obviously there's a lot of information that still needs to be shared with parents and teachers in order to improve our outcomes. So here's the thing. In order for us to be as of much service as possible to you all, it is incumbent on us to ask you to evaluate this session. So we have a SurveyMonkey, which I believe, yes, it's up on the screen. So here's the thing. It's a very brief survey. There's 3 questions. It would really help us if you provided us with some feedback, both on the information that was shared in the webinar and just whether Achieve webinars are useful to you. There's a comment section where you can tell us what we can do to improve, but also what kind of information you'd like to hear from us in the future. I'd like to thank my colleagues, Kelly Hughes. Kelly just got married, and her name is changing. And Ann Bolden, back to you, Ann.
Okay, great. Thanks, Michael. And I did just want to reiterate the fact that the resource document that we shared is a living, breathing document. So if you do come across any resources that you think might fit into the document, please don't hesitate to reach out to me to share those. And also really consider this a call to action to start thinking about what resources you may be equipped to put together given your vantage point and the resources that are at your disposal, knowing that parents are really looking for information on how they can help their students. With that, I think we'll close the webinar. I want to thank you all for taking time out of your very busy schedules to join us today. And as promised, the slides and all of the resources, including the video of Jared, which is a very, very well done video, will be available on our website by this time tomorrow at the latest. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This concludes today's conference. Thank you for participating. You may now disconnect.